You're live.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the 66th week of the Free Assange Online Vigil. It is myself, Andrew Smith, joined by my co host Steve Poikinen today. Before we get into the news and the statement by Carey Shenkman, I do want to go through some numbers with you guys first, though. Today is day 3,596 since the illegal and arbitrary detention of Julian Assange started. It is day 550 since the WikiLeaks founder was trafficked from the Ecuadorian embassy to Belmarsh prison following a $4.2 billion international monetary loan fund to the nation of Ecuador. It is 87 days until Vanessa Breitster's decision is due on Julian's extraordinary rendition, which will be January 4th, 2021. It is 121 days of federal incarceration for whistleblower Reality Winner. But in good news, it is day 207 since Chelsea Manning was released from federal prison. She does stream 4 times a week on Twitch, Thursday through Sunday from 7 to 11, I believe. So if you guys are not already subscribed, please hop over there. It is XYChelsea87. But how are you today, Steve?
I'm hanging in there, man. I am. My work week damn near killed me, but it didn't because
that's good.
Fortunately, I've discovered accidentally most of the time I am incredibly hard to kill.
That's definitely a good benefit to have.
Yeah. Not like there haven't been, people giving their fucking full effort towards that. Still kicking. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, down in the description for everybody that's watching right now and will watch into the future, we have tons of call to actions up right now. But the new one that we put out this week is in the description down below. There is 2 of them. One of them is a solidarity action with whistleblower David McBride in Australia. And the other one is contacting your local Congress critters as well as your city councils about Tulsi Gabbard and Thomas Massey's bills about amending the Espionage Act and pardoning Julian.
And to that, I did hear that Matt Gaetz from Florida had signed on to HR 1175, calling for the charges against Julian Assange to be dropped, and that as of yesterday afternoon, at least Justin Amash was taking a look at it and was leaning towards co-sponsoring. I don't know why you wouldn't, but here's the thing. Having a handful of more libertarian leaning Republicans co-sponsor this, it's not enough, and it's incumbent on all of us to...
Well, where's the squad?
They're polishing and sharpening the knives that they've had out for Tulsi Gabbard for a couple of years now, and at every conceivable opportunity they're going to stick those knives in her. I'm not a Tulsi Gabbard supporter, but I can recognize a decent piece of legislation when I see one. The fact that the conversation has turned into, hey, you guys should support this bill, and the immediate response is, fuck Tulsi Gabbard, she's goddamn right-winger, like from everybody who is on the left. It illustrates just how deep into the cartoon we are. Like, you don't have to like Tulsi Gabbard to support the legislation. You don't have to like AOC to support the legislation. You don't have to like any of these scum fucks. You don't. But you can pressure your particular elected official to co-sponsor this legislation.
So just for everybody in chat that's watching, we are going to be going through a couple different news stories, some Reporters Without Borders stories, a piece from The Intercept, and a few others. But we will, instead of having a guest, we're going to be actually examining the Carey Shenkman statement. We went through there and picked out a bunch of the really good pieces from it. So we hope that you guys will enjoy that. We did Trevor Tim on Tuesday. We went through the Trevor Tim releases. So that was really good to be able to go through that. So that'll be
here's how this is going to work out, and we may have mentioned it before, but it's worth reiterating because once again, nobody else is doing this, so here we are. But from now until closing arguments are submitted, we're going to be picking out a particular witness statement for every vigil. We're going to be going over some of the key points of those statements. If we can, we'll include some direct quotes from testimony, but because the testimony is privately owned, we don't have access to it. We only have what's been live tweeted. So that's that's basically going to be the vigils. We're going to return to having guests next week. However, we feel like it's incredibly important to keep fresh in everyone's minds exactly what's at stake here and exactly why there is no legal justification for the extraordinary rendition of Julian Assange.
And with Shenkman, his statement is probably one of the best historical outlinings of the evolution of the Espionage Act. So I just reading through there, and we'll put the links and everything in chat for everybody, was really cool. Because it gave a start to finish. Like, this was when it was created all the way through the policy and legislative history of today. So I just think that stuff like that's super interesting. But we do up first have a piece by Reporters Without Borders, if we want to get that one started.
Yeah, let's do we have a sleepy Josh?
Yeah, it's up.
Okay. Cool. So this is a pretty long piece when you open it up and get to reading it. A lot of it is stuff we had already covered, so I'm not going to dwell on any of that. But the original, or the statement that Reporters Without Borders put out says, "We are alarmed by what we have witnessed in the U.S. extradition case against Julian Assange. We firmly believe Assange has been targeted for his contributions to journalism, and the case against him is clearly a political application of the Espionage Act, which should present a bar to extradition. We also have serious humanitarian concerns which make Assange's extradition a possible matter of life or death. Finally, we have concerns about extensive barriers to open justice, which made it nearly impossible for us to do our jobs as NGO observers and monitor proceedings. We call again for the charges against Assange to be dropped and for him to be immediately released and certainly not extradited to the United States." That's from a friend of the show, Rebecca Vincent. And if you guys remember, if you've been with us for the entire trial, we had originally been given credit by Her Majesty's prison systems for pressuring the courts to allow for a platform to be given to NGO observing bodies so that they would be able to watch and monitor the proceedings. That was removed on opening day by concierge of the U.S. State Department, Vanessa Baratzer, the district judge in the case, citing, well, if we open it up to the public, then, maybe they'll snap a picture of the defendant and release it again. So we are going to have to shut out 40 non-governmental observing bodies as a result of this. Fuck you.
A literal temper tantrum by the judge in court. Like, no one told me that there was going to be international press freedom observers in the largest press freedom trial. Get them the fuck out of here. Like, straight day one, minute one of court.
No. They had to rearrest Julian first.
That's fair.
Yeah. Under a brand new superseding indictment that the State Department put in at the 11th and a half hour, expanding charges to include the testimony of a known pedophile and a paid FBI informant. Because, justice. At any rate, if we could go to the second slide, please. Josh,
it's already up.
Okay. So this is something like fairly interesting that I feel like people should pick up on and start screaming about. Journalist John Getz testified that WikiLeaks had republished the unredacted diplomatic cables, which had been published in the first instance by the website Cryptome and a number of media outlets. None of these outlets have faced adverse legal consequences. God damn it, this skipped on me. Adverse legal consequences for publishing the documents, only WikiLeaks. A statement read into the court by Cryptome founder John Young confirmed that the unredacted files remain on the website to this day, and that Cryptome has never been approached by U.S. law enforcement suggesting their publication was illegal. What the fuck? I mean, look, dude, if you can read that and still try to explain how this is a non-politically motivated case in general, like I'm willing to listen, but there's no way you can back it up with anything remotely approaching a fact. Nobody's talked to Cryptome about this. Nobody's approached Cryptome and said, hey, these are unredacted and, you know, lives of informants are in danger. The exact same arguments that they're levying against Julian Assange, they have not even begun to whisper in Cryptome's direction.
And that doesn't even start to get into the entire David Lee situation and Luke Harding from The Guardian.
Yeah.
Where it came out in court, where Vanessa Breitzer in court said, yeah, no, David Lee published first. It's his fault that it got published. She's the one that's responsible for leaking this information, unredacted. So in British court, straight two people from The Guardian just get implicated and could be setting themselves up to be indicted under the Espionage Act simply because they published a book.
Well, so here's the thing. They published the book to smear Julian Assange. They published the book without, you know, a shred of permission from either Julian or anyone else at WikiLeaks. This was an unauthorized biography. It was full of factual inaccuracies and smears and outright lies. In fact, it came out in court that, according to the book, Julian had shown, you know, disdain or a complete lack of care about the lives of informants. They misquoted him, they attributed a quote that they completely fucking made up because people who were at that dinner, including John Getz, whose testimony we just read, you know, contradicted Lee and Harding and said, no, none of them were at that dinner. Neither of those two guys were at that dinner. I remember that conversation very well. At no point did Julian Assange demonstrate any lack of concern about the people whose names had come out in this. In fact, quite the opposite. He took great pains to redact approaching 15,000 names by himself, because no one from The Guardian and no one from Der Spiegel, no one from Le Monde, no one from the New York Times would do it. Yet all of these outlets published, and the only person facing any sort of criminal charge over it is Julian Assange.
Yeah, even though they're all implicated in court. Like, all of these major media outlets worked hand in hand with this and did less work at redacting all of this information. Yet it's only WikiLeaks and Julian Assange that they go after.
But it's not a politically motivated case. No. There's no. This is just a open and shut demonstration of how I guess justice works in the Five Eyes countries. Here's the thing, man. Before we transition to the next article, and this is something that Nikki, our friend who joined us for several mornings of the hearing coverage, has brought up, isn't it about time we start talking to Reporters Without Borders about why they need to drastically downgrade the US and the UK when they do their international world press freedom rankings every year? I think currently they're 35th and 38th respectively, UK and the US. They need to be kicked out of the top 50 and wind up somewhere towards the bottom, because it's not just the charges against Julian Assange. It's not just the way that WikiLeaks has been treated in the last few years post Vault 7 release. This goes back to 2008 and the initial targeting of both Assange and WikiLeaks. This is now over a decade-long campaign to destroy both an individual and the organization he represents. I think it's about time to downgrade the US and the UK in terms of world press freedom. The fact of just the simple fact of NGOs being shut out from monitoring this process is enough. Rebecca Vincent told us that Turkey had a more open and fair process.
Isn't that sad?
Dude,
I don't know enough about Turkey.
Dude, she posted a picture, I think it was yesterday, and it was a side by side of it was basically like, who do you think is worse, Turkey or the Old Bailey? And it had a picture of her in Turkey, straight up military tribunal, dude, like armed dudes, if I recall, like, and then her at the Old Bailey with someone else, and the next one she goes and she was like, Turkish trolls, it's the Old Bailey. So it was, dude, the picture though was stark. Like it's a trip.
You're welcome to try and find it because I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
there's
no on screen. At least tag me in it, and I'll go look at it later. Real quick, I would like to take a moment to congratulate both the Miami Heat and Glory Jones for being a Miami Heat supporter. And while I'm on that subject, I did say that I would announce who my co-host was going to be for Slow News Day, and it is Glory Jones, and I'm really looking forward to this. Because I have a lot of respect for Glory. I think that for a 20-year-old, she gets it way better than most people that are my age, and I'm 42. So I'm really stoked on the direction that the show's going to go. And I invite all of you to join us tomorrow when we welcome back to the program the legendary Reverend Andy Chambers and Ian Schlackman. It's going to be kick-ass, so make sure you're there for that. And by the way, since I suck at promoting and Glory sucks at promoting, feel free to let people know that Glory is going to be co-hosting the show, because we're going to fucking slack on it. I promise. I flat the fuck out guarantee that.
It's true.
You just need a PR company, Steve.
Shit. I don't want a PR company. I don't. I fucking have a hard enough time paying rent. But sure, let's add another bill into my life.
That'll work.
That'll be solid. Good plan.
So up next, we have the article by The Intercept. Let me pull this up here. The unprecedented legal campaign to eliminate Julian Assange. So we start off here with what a ride it's been. The first recorded black op against Assange occurred September 27th, 2010, with a suitcase containing 3 laptop hard drives and clothing vanished from the aircraft carrying him from Sweden to Germany. Efforts to retrieve his belongings, which included privileged communications with his legal counsel, explicit vague excuses from the airline that it knew nothing. The fate of the purloined items became public knowledge in 2013 when information from his laptops appeared in prosecution briefs against U.S. military whistleblower Chelsea Manning. In 2011, FBI agents went to Iceland to employ an 18-year-old informant, Siggy, to spy on WikiLeaks. When Iceland's authorities discovered the FBI's illegal activities, it deported the FBI agents. Siggy, whom the FBI had paid $5,000 and flown around the world, later confessed to stealing money from WikiLeaks and was convicted for sexually abusing underage boys.
I just want that to sink in. Like, I do, and that's why I highlighted it. And by the way, if it looks like the text was highlighted just, haphazardly, a little bit sloppily, that's because it was. I've never tried using like a touch screen thing to highlight stuff before, and yesterday was my first day. So it's gonna look bad, and hopefully it'll look better as I get used to it. Please tell me that's your thumb, Andrew.
I'm still so mad that my fucking phone mount broke.
Get over it.
So I'm trying to. I have 8 thermostat boxes stacked up on top of a Swiffer container, trying to be able to mount my phone so I can record it.
But I want it to be like, I don't know, as clear as humanly possible that the FBI, and by extension the Department of Justice, is relying on the testimony of someone who is convicted for not just sexually assaulting young children, but someone who was also convicted for forging Julian Assange's signature, impersonating Julian Assange, and embezzling money from WikiLeaks after being paid by the FBI to infiltrate and set up the organization. This is their star fucking witness. Do you think that if this becomes like massively publicly known, that people are going to be okay with sending to a black hole for 175 years anyone based on the testimony of that kind of a piece of shit? I mean, I certainly hope not, but we live
Psychopath
in a fucking cartoon,
too.
So
Don't forget the psychopath part.
Oh yeah. No, an Icelandic health board determined that he was a certified fucking sociopath. So let's not forget that bit. Jesus fucking Christ. And then the other guy that they got, Sabu, was the rat that they used to set up LulzSec, in effect making the FBI the principal driving force behind the Stratfor hacks, the Sony hacks, HP Carey, a number of other high-profile hacks. That was all done at the direction of the FBI. Not so they could gain information on these organizations, but so they could set up and imprison people who took part in it, who took part in their operation, as one more way to get to Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. Live in a fucking cartoon. Let's go to that second slide then.
Not only did the U.S. choose to ignore other publishers of the American documents, but it also applied the law in a unique manner to suit their case against Julian. U.S. prosecutors had applied under the UK-U.S. extradition treaty of March 2013 to compel Britain to hand over...
2003.
Sorry. Article 4.1 of the treaty inconveniently for the prosecution states extradition shall not be granted for the offenses which the extradition is requested is a political offense. The prosecution and the court, however, cited British domestic legislation, the Extradition Act of 2003, which does not mention the political exclusion. The sleight of hands mirrored the contradiction between America's claims to apply the Espionage Act to Assange, who is an Australian, for actions undertaken in Iceland and the UK, while denying him protections of the more fundamental American law, the Constitution's First Amendment, with its guarantee of free speech and a free press. Can the prosecution get away with choosing which British and American laws apply to Assange and which don't? How much prosecutorial
Chicanery.
chicanery
It's a
can the
great
court,
word.
can a court swallow without destroying its own legitimacy?
To be
Look,
fair, I
props
didn't know that
to,
word either.
props to the author of this piece, because I like, okay, so my background is in writing and in journalism, and I do love me a well-constructed sentence. This is probably the most well-constructed sentence in terms of, you know, using $3 words and clever wordplay, uh that I think is represented in the article. And I just want to read that one more time. How much prosecutorial chicanery can a court swallow without destroying its own legitimacy? That is a fan-fucking-tastic sentence. And the highlighted segment, so this is something that I didn't even realize, that the US DOJ had used British domestic law that doesn't mention anything about a political exclusion for extradition. Rather, they're doing everything possible to dance around a fully ratified and enforceable treaty. So just a shit pile of dirty tricks that have been employed by both the US DOJ and British prosecutors in order to broad daylight kidnap Julian Assange. It's fucking, like, it's just crazy. And again, this is an Australian citizen who also had Ecuadorian citizenship. His Ecuadorian citizenship was illegally removed from him with zero due process by a puppet president who had accepted a bribe in order to commit this illegal act. Why? I'm glad that more and more lawyers and former judges have come forward saying, you know, this is a farce. It's completely illegal. You should not be doing this. But again, we need a ton more people, just regular, ordinary human beings, to scream this as well.
Yeah, we need people to be like we've talked about since the very beginning. Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
I've watched since February, since the opening of these hearings. I've watched it grow from, as Andrew was getting ready to say, like one voice in a community. I watched it become several. We're now at the point to where it's not about being the one person in your town. It's about you joining an ever-growing chorus of voices who are demanding that these charges be dropped, demanding a halt to this illegal and immoral extradition process.
Yeah.
Sorry, I fucking...
No, you're good. I think we have one slide left for the thing. Jennifer Robinson's one of Assange's.
So let's set it up here real quick, because this is an entirely different article. This is out of the World Socialist website, and this is something that if you go back and you read the Reporters Without Borders statement, there's some corroboration there as well. But to just kind of set it up a little bit, there were, for the first several weeks of the rendition hearing, a handful of seats that were kept empty, that they said that were being reserved for these unnamed diplomats, therefore further limiting the amount of people who could come in, like Reporters Without Borders or like Amnesty International or journalists, or, you know, it further restricted the public from being able to in any way, shape, or form monitor the proceedings. So we finally found out about it this week, and in a very lengthy World Socialist website article, there is a couple of paragraphs that explain what happened, and that is the bits that we pulled out for the vigil today. So now that it's set up, you can go ahead, Andre.
You want me to go ahead now?
Swing, buddy.
Hey, Barmus
The-
is in the chat. He wants us on again soon.
Hey, what's up? The extreme measures taken against Assange reached their all-time low when Lenin Moreno replaced the pro-Assange Rafael Correa as president of the nation of Ecuador on May 24th, 2017. Former employees of a private Spanish intelligence firm, Undercover Global SL, otherwise known as UC Global, which was employed to provide security to the London embassy, testified on the final day of Assange's hearing that they had installed more cameras and microphones, tampered with mobile phones of visitors, stolen the diapers of one of Assange's babies to take his DNA, and discussed his kidnapping and murder. They fed a live video feed to the CIA of Assange's legal consultations. Something similar happened to Daniel Ellsberg after he released the Pentagon Papers to the New York Times and Washington Post in 1971. The White House plumbers, who had later robbed the Democratic headquarters in Washington's Watergate complex, broke into Ellsberg's psychiatry office to steal his medical files. The FBI had bugged Ellsberg's phone without a warrant. So outrageous was the government's behavior that Judge William Matthew Brain dismissed the Espionage Act
Burn.
against what?
You said brain. It's burn.
Oh, Burn. Oh,
It's not
what
mega. It's not mega brain.
dismissed the Espionage Act cases against Ellsberg with prejudice, meaning that the government could not appeal. Jennifer Robinson, one of Assange's lawyers, added that if the Australian government was doing diplomatic representation, Julian would not be in this position he is today. He is an Australian citizen who won a Walkley Award for journalism, facing extradition. Robinson revealed that 3 seats had been reserved in the court for representatives of Australia's High Commission in London. They did not show up or bother to inform Assange's lawyers. This meant that for several days, under conditions of severe restricted seating due to coronavirus crisis, monitors from Amnesty International and other rights organizations could not attend the proceedings. The empty courtroom seats sum up the real attitude of the entire Australian political media and media establishment to Assange. Whatever weasel words concern they might occasionally utter, there is indifference to the prosecution of a journalist for publishing the truth, and would rather not see or hear of his dire plight. You're muted, Steve.
I am muted. That's another fabulously constructed sentence right there. It is. Yeah, whatever weasel words of concern they may occasionally utter. You can usually tell when the author of a particular piece is a ardent watcher of independent media, because the phraseology that certain content creators use will then appear in the news articles. And to my knowledge, the only person who frequently uses the term weasel words is Jimmy Dore. When I went and saw Nozomi Hayase give a presentation at Sonoma State University, one of the things she put up in her PowerPoint on it was calling out the stenographers of the establishment media. And I got a kick out of that too. I'm like, hey, at least the people that we look to for some truth are also going way far outside the establishment media bubble in order to get their own background information. Makes me happy.
So we have left just the statements by Shenkman. The statement by Shenkman. Let me rephrase that. I'm going to drop the link. For everyone who doesn't know, friend of the show, Tariq Haddad, has an amazing archive up on his website that goes through literally everything that happened in court. He has every single witness statement that's public up there. He has a lot of the proceedings, a lot of analysis, a lot of different articles all sourced. And that's Tariq Haddad, TAREQHADDAD.com. It takes a minute to load. But once it is up in the right-hand corner, there's a section called the archives, and that is a massive, massive conglomeration of information about Julian's prosecution and then also court proceedings. So I'd recommend everybody check that out. But that is where we got this statement from, is off of that website.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with your computer. There's nothing wrong with your internet connection when you go and look. It's just the website moves like a turtle on Valium.
Yeah.
Lake of frozen molasses. It's
pretty
frustrating. And if anyone has any questions or anything like that, throw them at us. As always, we're into it. Let's see.
So this, we talked about it a little bit earlier. Shenkman's statement is essentially a written history of the Espionage Act, the way that it goes through all the different pieces. So I'm going to pull up here to give a little bit of background on who Shenkman is and what he does before we get pulled into this. I just have to get the tweets up real quick. So this is from one over on the Defense Assange account. This is just an article about Shenkman's organization. It's one of the pieces of work that Shenkman did with Michael Ratner. If anyone knows who Michael Ratner was, I believe he was an investigative journalist that was rather profound in his day. He did pass away a couple years ago, but Shenkman was someone that studied underneath him and actually had worked, as he summarizes it, I believe it was the plankton on Julian's legal team at one point. So
yeah, Michael Ratner was part of that ran Julian's U.S. legal team.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that he died; it's that he was killed.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, there are a number of people that are connected to Michael Ratner that, or are alleged to have been connected to Michael Ratner that have also been killed. One of them being Seth Rich. There's a pretty followable trail of blood that leads right to the doorstep of the U.S. State Department.
Yeah.
Oh, and to answer the super chat in my chat from John Coyne, why are there only 40 some people watching this? They suppress the fuck out of our channels. We are so far buried in the YouTube algorithm that when we break like 60 or 70 live viewers on a particular channel, we're pretty stoked about it. That's how that's how buried we've been, which sucks because it's us and Consortium News and Shadowproof, and we all get the same amount of suppression. It's an uphill battle, but in my mind, it at least lends a little bit of legitimacy to what we're doing, because if they wanted this information out, they wouldn't be trying so hard to bury it.
So Shenkman is a lawyer specializing in human rights and constitutional law. He works with numerous organizations, including the Center for Constitutional Rights, Article 19, and is an advisor for Colombia's Global Freedom of Expression program. So do we want to get the first slides up on there? Because this is essentially a play-by-play of his statements. It is worth a read on your own, or if you want to read along with us, but this is just 8 little different excerpts from his statement itself. So I'm seeing where Josh has the camera at.
I can't get Androp to open for me anymore.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll just read them. It's not a big deal. So this is line 2. The proposed this is referring to the Espionage Act as it was made. The proposed legislation was debated extensively in Congress in May and April 1917. Winston contended, that's President Woodrow Wilson, that his authority to exercise censorship over the press is absolutely necessary with public safety.
To the public
To,
safety.
man, you gotta let me fuck up, bro.
It makes the sentence not make sense.
We're trying to make it make sense to the people who are watching at home too,
That's fair.
who probably have the ability to read it off the screen as well, but I don't know. I finally got Androp to open. That's nice.
There you go.
It's slow because we're streaming.
A press censorship provision in the original bill prompted the strongest criticism. It gave the president broad authority to declare unlawful in wartime the publication of any information of such character that it is or might be useful to the enemy. One congressman referred to this provision as a vicious precedent, as another an instrument of tyranny. The provision also roundly criticized the press and its leading trade organizations.
By the press. By the press. Not
By the press. Man, someone else just needs to fucking read. I can't do this no more. The American Newspaper Publication Association. The association declared that the provision strikes at the fundamental rights of people and that in war especially, the press should be free, vigilant, and unfettered. Congress rejected the president's press censorship provision and narrowed 2 sections of the administration's bill limiting freedom of expression. In the first instance, one open-ended language against instigating disaffection in the U.S. military forces was replaced with a prohibition against causing insubordination, disloyalty, mutiny, and a refusal of duty. The second language prohibiting treasonable and anarchistic publications was removed from a section defining the Postmaster General's authority to ban anti-war publications from the mail. So even as far back as before the Espionage Act was even passed, it was explicitly something to be used specifically to limit speech relative to war. So that is the most basic function of this act, which is what we're still seeing it have it do today.
And which just speaks to the overwhelming political nature of it, and to have the prosecution stand there and try to explain why it's not a politically motivated case is an exercise in pretzel logic and the flexibility of language and the ability for a lawyer to trade shreds of their soul for appointments and clout. Picking up on this, and also, yeah, I mean, this is a country that prides itself on being like, we're free. Yeah, our Postmaster General used to have the right to go ahead and intercept everybody's mail to make sure that there weren't, I guess, anarchistic pamphlets being sent through the U.S. Postal Service.
Those damn anarchists,
recognize
bro.
that and be able to send somebody to prison for sending letters in the mail. And they, in fact, did send Eugene Debs to prison for saying some words to soldiers, trying to get people to not join up for the army. That was the first time that the Espionage Act was used against a speech. At the time, there was also something called the Sedition Act, which doesn't exist anymore, thankfully, because it was ruled unconstitutional. That would have given Eugene Debs an additional 30 years in prison for talking. It's a cartoon. Picking up on Carey Shenkman's statement, if we could, Josh, go to
Already there.
Number 3. Okay. From the outset, the act was applied to targets both small and large. For instance, it was applied to Robert Goldstein, producer of a film entitled The Spirit of 76, a silent epic film about the War of Independence, a subplot about efforts to install King George's mistress as Queen of America, and graphic images of British atrocities. The film opened just weeks after U.S. entry into the war. Goldstein was charged under the newly minted Espionage Act with attempting to harm the war effort by portraying the U.S.'s chief ally in a critical light and sentenced to 10 years imprisonment. If the trial of Robert Goldstein seemed arbitrary, the prosecution of William Big Bill Haywood was not. For the business community and government officials, the radical labor leader was one of the most hated and feared figures in the nation. His organization, the International Workers of the World, IWW, was threatening to the Wilson administration. Haywood was tried together with 100 other IWW leaders en masse for violation of the Espionage Act. All were found guilty, and Haywood received a 20-year sentence. Languishing in poor health, he passed away in 1928. This is all pre-World War II. This is still, fairly new to the American landscape. The ability to imprison people for speech.
And historically, and this goes through it in even greater detail, the Espionage Act has always been used against the actual political left, like the anti-war organizers, the union organizers, the anarchists, as it was originally written. So it's insane to me how much history is lost on the academia institutions about the Espionage Act and how it has been used, and where are these institutions and these people, right, that are in the streets promoting this? Like, where is this larger pushback of, hey, we know how the Espionage Act's been used, fucking stop it?
Well, it speaks to the taming of those institutions, or the conquering of those institutions by the state, where now they're vessels or arteries through which state control and manipulation operates, as opposed to vehicles of pushback against it. Hey, thanks, John Coyne. I have a Ray token address, but I have no idea what it is.
We can set up a Bitcoin wallet as well. It's on the same thing.
Yeah.
But we'll have to do that after the show, though.
Yeah. Going back to the statements, though. Oh yeah, and just like one more time, I know I say this a lot, but the fact that Americans don't know our own history as a fucking rule is the driving force behind why the state gets to get away with this shit. When you put the state in charge of education, you put the state in charge of what your children get taught and what they believe. It seems backwards to me, although I'm not a big fan of making that shit privatized either, because then you just get a different set of lies put onto your kids.
I think the solution there is just fuck school. In general.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I think that, like, you get a broader education out of a vocational or technical training program than you do in a classroom setting anyway, because there's a myriad of applicable life lessons that you get out of a vocational program, aside from just the course specific material. I'm wandering pretty far afield from what we were talking about, though. So back to the statements. Oh, and we should also be being joined by Kendra Christian in about 10 minutes.
This is our fourth slide. This is
Yeah, it's up.
okay. World War II. Number 14. World War II did not see the same volume of prosecutions as the First World War. While there were nearly 2,000 federal prosecutions of 2,500 persons in World War I, the American Civil Liberties Union reported 28 prosecutions involving 123 persons on account of dissidents or statements opposing the war in a period ending on July 1945. Within this number, there were attempts to prosecute under the Espionage Act, particularly investigations of African American newspapers, which advocated for greater civil rights at home. The Attorney General at the time, Francis Biddle, was critical of the Espionage Act and staved off prosecutions of the black press. He would write in his memoir. He would write in his memoirs. History showed that sedition statutes, laws addressed to what men said, invariably had been used to prevent and punish criticisms of governments, particularly in a time of war.
At this point, I think it's fair to go back and kind of walk through what the evolution of the claims the prosecution was making against Julian Assange for why he should be broad daylight kidnapped and thrown in a black hole for 175 years. It started out with, well, it doesn't matter if we're going after Julian Assange because he's not a journalist. And then there were days of testimony about how WikiLeaks and Julian Assange engaged in standard journalistic activity. And that turned into, well, okay, so he's a journalist, but the U.S. has every right under the sun to prosecute journalists under the Espionage Act. And after some pushback on that, they were like, well, okay, but it's really about this conversation that he had with Chelsea Manning. And we've got records of this conversation. So it's about the conversation. Whether or not any of the activities discussed took place, that doesn't matter. It's about the fact that they talked about it in a chat once. No, we can prove that it was Julian Assange. No, the identity of Nathaniel Franks was never established or proved in court. No, that's true. So we're going to say he put the lives of informants in danger. Oh, there were several days of testimony that said he did not put the lives of informants in danger. Okay, well then fuck you. It's personal. We want Julian Assange in a black hole. End of fucking story. And that's where it left off. That's where we're at.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything? I feel like I might have skipped over about a month's worth of testimony.
It was pretty good. You hit all the major notes. You forgot the part where Claire Dobbins got to call in sick for James Lewis, though. You did forget that story.
Well, that's like a, I don't know. That's a subplot. It is. Oh, fuck, we're losing the narrative. My partner may have symptoms that may be COVID-like. Let's cancel court for 48 hours because
James Lewis forgot his
mega brain. James Lewis left part of his computer in the courtroom and all of his files at his other house and is currently covered in freaking cocaine and hooker blood and can't make court today.
And you know, that 2 days would have been fucking nice because they rushed through that last fucking day like hella fast.
The very first week of this hearing, this charade, this fucking Kafka-esque flex of state muscle and authority, we lost half of that week to technical problems or to a completely bullshit scenario where the specter of COVID was raised in order to cancel court. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, please, if we could.
This is number, I think it's number 5, but it says number 19.
I'll pick it up, Andre.
Okay.
Attorney General Tom Clark suggested that prosecutorial discretion would safeguard against prosecutions of the press. He reassured that the integrity of the three branches of government. I'm sorry, I can't read this shit with a straight face. Let me try. He reassured that the integrity of the three branches of the government would ensure that nobody other than a spy, saboteur, or other person who would weaken the internal security of the nation need have any fear of prosecution under either existing law or the provisions of this bill.
Real quick. So that, if you read it, right, if you read it with like normal person words, that's where the argument of, well, I'm not doing anything wrong, what does it matter, really comes from, in the terms of like the US's ideations into tyranny, where you have him literally saying other persons who would weaken the internal security of the nation need have any fear of prosecution under either law or provision of this bill. So this is where the, well, you don't have anything to hide, so you're okay, we're not coming after you, with this really starts. Like, that mentality in U.S. law and larger culture.
It also creates an avenue to where you can raise suspicion on your neighbors. And it really starts to open the door for the U.S. becoming a domestic surveillance state that not just rivals but surpasses the Stasi comes from. Okay. The American Newspaper Publishers Association succeeded in including a general provision in the McCarran Act, the legislation which included the Espionage Act amendments, that nothing in this act shall be construed to authorize, require, or establish military or civilian censorship, or in any way limit or infringe upon freedom of the press or of speech. Unfortunately, such promises did not carry the force of law to override the broad provisions of this act. And that's really what we've seen, especially in the arguments that the State Department and their British prosecutors laid out, is that, well, because of the way that the Espionage Act is written, and because of the way that the conspiracy to commit computer intrusion charge, the legislation that supports that is written, it's written so broad that it could apply to anyone. And in fact, Clerk Dobbin made a point to say that if you've read classified material as a private citizen, you could be subject to prosecution under the Espionage Act. If you shared it, you could be subject to prosecution under the Espionage Act. It's why we encouraged all of you to violate the Espionage Act by sharing classified information that has already been made public. And we'll continue to do so. I'm sorry, go ahead. What?
I was going to say, or release the information that hasn't yet been shared with the public. Just please don't do it through us or The Intercept.
Yeah, no, we don't have the resources to protect you as a whistleblower. WikiLeaks does. And yeah, don't go to The Intercept. Please don't do that. They're not the outlet that you want to take your classified material to. Although there was a point made in court, just as a point to make, not as a suggestion, and please don't take this as a suggestion, but the secure drop that WikiLeaks created to where you could communicate safely and share classified information, leaked material safely. All major outlets now have the exact same thing or a derivative of secure drop. So it just reinforces the personal and political nature of the prosecution.
Yeah, I mean, protecting your sources is basic journalistic competence.
It really is. It's like entry-level shit.
Right.
You know? Let's protect the source, and then let's stand on protecting the source. And I know that there's an argument, as it mostly comes from the right, or what people call the alt-right, why doesn't Julian just give up his source? Why doesn't he just, turn his back on everything the organization he started stands for? That's what we would do. We're fucking cowards.
Well, Daddy Trump,
little men with big voices and big platforms. So we would turn on our own mothers for a fucking sniff of freedom. So why won't Julian Assange do it? Because he's a better person than you, Nick Fuentes. That's why.
Yeah. I literally had to look that dude in the eyes and tell him, "You're next." 4 months later, Millie Weaver gets dragged away in the process of premiering a documentary live.
Hey, look, man, I'm just stoked I remembered that fucking maggot's name mid because I haven't had to utter it in like 8 months.
But back to the slides. We are on number 6, I think. The Espionage Act and media sources under the Obama administration. So more Espionage Act prosecutions of the media and sources under the administration of President Barack Obama were initiated than all other previous administrations combined. These prosecutions included cases against Thomas Drake, Stephanie Kim, I'm not going to pronounce another name because I can't pronounce names, Chelsea Manning, Donald, Jeffrey Sterling.
You missed Stephen
John
Kim.
Kiriakou.
You missed Stephen Kim too.
Oh, I said Stephen Kim.
Did you? I thought you skipped it.
You should read, Josh.
No, I thought you skipped over. I can't pronounce that fucking name either. I thought you skipped over both of them. Just try to be complete.
Shemai Leibovitz?
There you go. I can't pronounce that shit either.
Should I pick this up?
I mean, you can.
It's all names. It's all names.
You guys are basically watching a production meeting of Action for Assange in real time right now.
We're scripted as fuck. Scripted as fuck.
These defendants are prevented from arguing that their disclosures were made in the public interest or to expose corruption, fraud, or war crimes. And then I forgot to cross that last line out there. Hence, it is irrelevant. But
what,
number 28? Yep, the 2010 publications of WikiLeaks prompted debates within the House Judiciary Committee of the House of Representatives on the scope of the Espionage Act. Numerous legal scholars and practitioners collectively recommended Congress revise the Espionage Act. In a common critique of the act, its lack of proportionality or public interest defense availability under the act, defendants have no opportunity to argue that their disclosures were in the public interest.
Yeah, and that's something that people don't know or don't understand. It hasn't fully sunk in yet. Hey, Kendra, how's it going?
Hey, guys.
There is no public interest defense in a national security case or an Espionage Act case. There is going to be no moment of Julian Assange getting his day in court and being able to shed light on, material that hasn't been released yet, to the point to where they black out the windows and tape over the cracks in the doors when this testimony is, or when I guess the charade is being produced in front of the jury. In the Eastern District of Virginia, where Julian Assange would be tried, all of the jury pool is national security adjacent individuals. I can't stress enough that there is no there's no avenue for the defendant to speak to the vital nature of the public's right to know in any of these cases. That's just got to start sinking in, and it's got to start sinking in with our friends on the right who are like, well, he can just show up in court and talk. No, he can't. In fact, his lawyers can't either.
Well, I mean, that really goes to, this is something that the libertarians had a discussion about at one of their national conventions, about how maybe they should have focused on things like jury nullification and specifically on legal issues, while they were trying to build and expand the idea of what the Libertarian Party was. because these types of reforms are commonly accepted. Like, no one wants to be put into a courtroom where you can't present evidence or say, hey, this is why the hell I did this crime. But the fact that there's just not a general consensus among the population about how national security courts work, because it is largely just a spin court. Like, it's public relations for the national security state to avoid any type of further disclosures.
Well, and I think too that sometimes when you talk to people about this type of thing, they don't even believe that it's going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reality, you know.
Yeah.
'Cause it's also something that people don't want to believe.
Well, it's because people are so caught up, and I don't mean to use the term because it's a CIA word, but in conspiracy theories and in waiting for the shoe to the other shoe to drop, and trusting the plan, and looking at all of these like fantastic mystic level programs and shit, while like literally the heart of the spiritual rot of society is currently prosecuting the man that tried to expose it. So there's this massive disconnect between people about what is real, what is possible, and what is happening. And I think it's intentionally manufactured to allow things like this to continue.
That's fair.
Yeah.
John Coyne, thank you very much for the super chat. That's incredibly generous.
Hell yeah, Burmese is going to be covering some new Seth Rich stuff pretty quick here.
Cool. I'd love to have him on to go over some stuff with that too, because I got to dig into the new stuff.
Yeah, Steve's going to call him after the show. Just set shit up.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, like, I won't call you in the middle of your live stream, Jay. I'll wait till you're done. You know,
hey, he can join anytime he wants. If he calls, just put him on speaker.
We do it live.
So I think we're on 7 of 8 slides here. The Espionage Act under the Trump administration. Do you want to pick this one up, Steve? There's lots of big words.
Yeah. The administration of Donald Trump has prosecuted disclosures of national security information more aggressively than any presidency in U.S. history. Indeed, Trump's Justice Department is on track in less than one 4-year presidential term to exceed the number of Espionage Act prosecutions under 2 terms of Obama's presidency. In October of 2019, Trump's Justice Department indicted its eighth alleged journalistic source, Henry Kyle Fries. This escalation in prosecutions is consistent with a dramatic policy shift in approach to applying the Espionage Act. You should consider jailing journalists who publish classified information, Trump repeatedly told his FBI director, James Comey. Those remarks were doubled down upon by then Attorney General Jeff Sessions. He stated that he cannot make a blanket commitment not to put reporters in jail for doing their jobs. Sessions testified in 2017 that the Justice Department had increased its investigations into media leaks to 27, an increase representing a tripling of investigations from his predecessor. And this is another thing where, like, our friends on the right really got to start paying attention. Like, it's not just about pissing off liberals or owning Nancy Pelosi, who is in the exact same economic class as Donald Trump.
Right? Like, how the fuck can you have the, like, Trump's fighting the deep state narrative while at the same fucking time he literally tells James Comey to go after leakers and whistleblowers, gets Jeff Sessions to sign off on the prosecution of Julian Assange, has William Barr double the fuck down on it when he comes into office with 2 additional superseding indictments? Like, where is the fighting of the deep state? Like, you have this whole Trump just released all the Russiagate information
that all of us have known for years.
Yeah.
Right. That is at the same time happening while he has 3 times more prosecutions of whistleblowers than the Obama administration does. Like, how is that in any way promoting any idea of stopping the military-industrial complex when all you do is prosecute people that try to blow the whistle on it?
Well, and
No.
that once the press is gone, I mean, this whole thing is like, oh, well, you know, free press. Well, we still gotta get Trump in there because everybody's so terrified, you know, and it's like, well, guess what? When we don't have free press, you know, eventually a left president is also going to be able to take advantage of that. You know, I mean, it's nonsense. It's like the most important, it's the First Amendment. It's first for a reason. You know, that's one thing but I have to say, like, I also was not aware of this. I mean, I obviously knew about the Assange case, but I did not know that he had already prosecuted more than Obama under this. I had no idea until I read this. I thought that was interesting information.
Oh no, it is, and it really explodes the narrative that Trump is on our side or fighting for us. There, you
think this conversation will come out in the new Comey documentary on HBO? Like, you think there'll be a sit-down part where, like, Trump and Comey are, like, sipping on macchiatos, eating their Big Macs, like, hey, we need to prosecute more whistleblowers. And Comey's like, yeah.
You know,
I'm glad we could finally find some common ground, sir.
Right now, back to peeing on Russians.
Yeah, the fuck.
Oh Lord. I believe it's wasn't it the Russians peeing on him? Was that the Luke Harding, or who did that shit?
It was
Oh no, it's Steele. That's the motherfucker.
Yeah,
the DNC
dossier, which
Jesus
was
Christ.
originally a firm connected to McCain.
Really?
Put
I
up
didn't know
the
that.
original money for Christopher Steele, and then the Clinton campaign itself took it.
They work together? That's creepy. What does Carlin say about bipartisanship?
So George Carlin says that bipartisan means that a larger than normal deception is taking place.
It's fucking perfect.
Oh my God. What's the connection between the Henry guy who runs CloudStrike and Julian? Wasn't he part
John
of
Henry was
wasn't
one
he
of
part of the
only
Icelandic ring?
FBI agents that could have possibly been Sabu's handler. Sabu, Hector Monsegur, the rat who set up Jeremy Hammond and Commander X and a number of other people who took part in LulzSec. So CrowdStrike was the reward that Sean Henry got from being a good FBI agent, special agent. I love how the acronym system works in the FBI, because the rank that Sean Henry had was SAC, special agent in charge.
He is a fucking sack.
Missing one, but no one.
It's Petty Bitch Theater with Steve Poikonen. That's what it is.
And before the mega brain jokes start.
But no, becoming the CEO of CrowdStrike was the reward that Sean Henry got for successfully setting up an operation that basically shut down Anonymous for the better part of a decade. And Sean Henry admitted in court, although we didn't find out for a few years because they kept the transcripts private, that CrowdStrike could not prove and found no shred of information that the DNC servers were in fact hacked, but rather a leak had taken place, a download had taken place.
Mm-hmm.
But do we want to?
I think we have just number 8 left. So this is just the closing statement. This is the very last section. In Shenkman's. What?
To read one?
Yeah,
You
go
want
ahead.
me to read one?
Yeah, it's number 8. It's
Okay.
the very last one.
What number is that on the actual?
42.
In a moment
42.
of Douglas Adams serendipity, it is 42.
It's a secret of life, buddy.
It's the answer to the ultimate question.
Okay, so there has never, in the century-long history of the Espionage Act, been an indictment of a U.S. publisher under the law for the publication of secrets. Accordingly, there has never been an extraterritorial indictment of a non-US publisher under the Act. During World War I, federal prosecutors considered the mere circulation of anti-war materials a violation of the law. Nearly 2,500 individuals were prosecuted under the Act on account of their dissenting views in opposition to US entry in the war. Targets were as small as independent filmmaker Robert Goldstein or as prominent as presidential candidate Eugene Debs and national labor leader William Big Bill Hayward. Over a century later, exposure of wartime abuses would still fall within the crosshairs of the Act. The difference from the expansive use under the Act in World War I of individuals for their dissenting views in opposition to the US is that the law is being used not only against publishers, but extraterritorially. The current US administration has signaled its desire to escalate prosecution as well as jailing journalists who publish classified information. The Espionage Act's breadth provides such a means. While prior legislators and attorney general have attempted to provide reassurance that 793 of the Act would not ever be used against the press, such reassurances are regarded as having no weight against the plain text of the law and the reality of the present day. What is now concluded by journalists and publishers generally is that any journalist in any country on earth, in fact, any person who conveys secrets that do not conform to the policy positions of the US administration can be shown now to be liable to being charged under the Espionage Act of 1917.
And we had Victor on recently to talk about this last statement here, that the Espionage Act can be used anywhere in the world. And that idea is only applicable if you also think that U.S. traffic laws are applicable anywhere in the world, if you think U.S. tax law is applicable anywhere in the world, if you think U.S. law in regards to abortion is applicable anywhere in the world, because this is a domestic law with no international standing whatsoever being used as if it is an international agreement, the Espionage Act. And that's just absolutely insane. Because people aren't even pushing back against it in that way either, as Victor explained the last time, to where if you don't want the US's ruling on insert whatever, whether it's abortion, gun rights, what have you, to be applicable in your country, then the Espionage Act shouldn't be either, because they're both US domestic law.
And I know that we have an international audience here. I know that I mean, from personal experience, we've reached out to and worked with people in a number of different countries. And until Victor Dadaj had put that to us, like, that was the first time that I'd have thought of putting it in that way. Sorry, my 8-year-old popped out and was trying to get me to side with him on something situation that he got himself into.
He can have
it happen right now.
It's like 140 degrees and California's on fire. He can have some popsicles.
You clean up your own mess, dude. I'm looking to me for sympathy.
Oh, he's so loud, dude. Like, he's the loudest child.
Oh.
I love you, and we'll talk about it in a minute. Okay, how about that? Slam. There it is.
One thing that this last section we read made me think of is just how much control the mainstream media has, just even in defining the conversation about whether Julian Assange was a journalist or not a journalist, and all of this crap that people, argue about, when the bottom line is it doesn't matter, because anybody who has a phone or you have those First Amendment protections. So it's just insane to me. This is something that could happen to any person. Like, it could be, somebody who catches something on camera somewhere. It's just insane. And I'm not saying that would happen immediately, but I don't think, given the escalation of certain things that we've seen, that it'd be too far off, and I think everybody should notice what's going on.
Claire Dobbins said it. You know, she said it in court for everyone who was allowed to or able to listen to hear. And the only way that this can progress is the targeting of private citizens. The only way that this can progress is shutting down and I guess implementing full state control over what is and isn't allowable information. And I don't think anybody wants to live in that society. I certainly don't think that anyone who I don't know, is involved in activism in any sphere with any cause is can look at this and not see themselves in it. You know, the only way that whatever it is you're advocating for proliferates is based on your ability to get it out into the public sphere. If that is taken away from you using the prosecution of Julian Assange to set that precedent, it's incumbent on you to stand up for Julian Assange.
Exactly. I mean, and we're what are we? We're in a society now where like the Democratic candidate for president, has gone like had one position during the primaries and a new position now, and all the I mean, everything's just such power relations. So it's not like people should know too that even if you're on board with everything now, that doesn't mean you're going to be on board with everything later. And I think that people have to remember that. That's why we have our rights. There, rights are meant for the worst possible times, and you should never get rid of them.
Well, and if they can be removed so arbitrarily, then they weren't rights to begin with. They were pleasant little gestures, and certainly not enshrined or embedded rights.
Well, and that's a good point too, right? Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's not like these are things that our government is allowing us. It's like the whole mindset has kind of flipped to what the government is and what we are.
Well, look at it even in relation to the way that people argue healthcare is a human right, which I believe that it is. But that doesn't mean that we need to promote and elevate people that ultimately want to eliminate the foundational rights that we have that got us to collectively understand that healthcare is a human right. So we're in this strange situation where everyone's trying to use speech to get their message across, but no one wants to defend people's right to have it. And that's that's the craziest thing. Like, we're at a time where speech is more important than ever, and it is being taken from us. And it's being taken in a way that says you can't expose corruption and government lies, when no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, you want to get rid of corruption and governmental lying. So it's just, it's nuts.
Well, there's
trust in the plan. You got to trust in the plan, Andrew.
That's true. I forgot.
The plan apparently was Donald Trump is never leaving the White House. And that's the plan that you should trust. That came out a few weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah, when they finally brought to light who Q was. Do you remember this? It kind of went under the.
I didn't
slip through the whole.
I didn't know that got. I didn't know that got verified.
I thought there were receipts to go along with that, but one of the founders of HN.
I saw one of the receipts, and it was a DNS entry, and it was just pointing to a CDN, which does not mean they're the same server. It means they're going through like Cloudflare or something like that. So I didn't see anything compelling that proved that. So, but I don't know if I saw everything, but from what I saw, I looked into it when I saw it, and I was like, yeah, you need to check that. That's a CDN IP. That's not the same server.
I have no fucking idea what that means.
Any nerds in our chat will understand what the fuck I'm talking about.
Word.
RSFO's in here. He'll know what I'm talking about.
There's a former intelligence officer by the name of Steve Pashinik, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, that regularly makes YouTube videos, and as far back as 2018, he was talking about the three-term Trump. So this is something that's been circulating through the intelligence community for a really long time to gain whatever precedence it needs to be pushed into the general public. So it's that's not really a surprise.
Well, and they needed a resurgence of Black Lives Matter protesters in the street. They needed a reason to put agents provocateur out into protests to damage private property, set fire to structures, create this whole narrative that there's going to be a new civil war, that there's going to be illegitimate, like they're finally saying, okay, look, the election isn't going to be legitimate this time around. With mail-in voting, there's no way we can expect to have election day results. There's going to be a period of time where like nobody in the fucking country knows who the next president is. Not that we necessarily are affected by that, because we've come to realize that it doesn't matter who the president is. It matters whether or not we still get to be subjected to the rule of unelected pedophiles. But for the rest of the country, it does matter who the president is. And there's going to be a period of time where that's just not an option, where answering that question isn't going to take place. So they've deliberately created this period of confusion and this period of recognized illegitimacy. And I mean, Jimmy Dore says it all the time, but chaos favors the establishment. It does. It allows for mechanisms of control to be implemented that I can't stress this enough. Like, once emergency powers are granted, they are seldom, if ever, rescinded.
Look at the Patriot Act.
Yeah. Yeah. The Patriot Act gets reauthorized by every president. It doesn't matter what letter it comes at the end of it.
Every Democrat, every Republican, every president, they all sign off on that shit, minus like probably 2 people or something. It's crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, minus like probably Tulsi Gabbard and Thomas Mackey. We're starting to be able to name them, on our hands, the people who
it's cartoonish.
Yeah.
Like, we lost so many fucking rights because of that goddamn law, which, if I recall, Biden wrote.
Yeah.
So
what Joe Biden wrote was called the Omnibus Counterterrorism Act of 1995, and that was the forerunner to the Patriot Act. Most of the changes in it were just to update the act with new technology or more allowable money to go to civilian law enforcement organizations and further militarize them. And that's the guy that fucking is running as the Democrat, this freaking brain dead, pedophilic, fucking authoritarian who attacks Trump from the right on so many different issues. Our friend Pasta Jardula went on Uphill Media the other day to have a debate with a guy named, I can't remember his last name, Josue something. It's from he has a show of his own, and it was just an exercise in how futile it is to vote in a rigged system inside a duopoly. Like, Pasta just absolutely destroyed this guy, and I'm sure that the dude was like, I held my own and did a really good job of defending a system that will never represent me. But if you didn't watch, I don't go in for debates. I don't go, like, my own show is not a debate show. I've hosted one. It was fucking hysterical.
Is that Yellow Vest?
Right?
But like, I'll host a debate, but I don't really want to, I don't want that to be my show. I don't want to have a debate show. I would rather explore ideas and and go somewhere with it than what most debates are. And to me, what most debates are is a pushing further into your own little impenetrable bubble, whichever side of the debate you fall on. I'm not into that.
Well, both of them made.
Nope.
Well,
Your
agree,
internet.
both-
Your
both
repeat that,
the major
Kendra. Your
parties
internet.
are
Your internet's getting freaky. Repeat that.
100% fine with our free press away.
Let's get-
Sorry, guys. I was just saying, like, both Biden and Trump guaranteed. Still bad? Is it still bad?
Yeah, there's a really big delay.
There's a huge
Oh,
delay between your
right.
video and your audio.
Let me try to get out and in.
Okay.
But I think we can start wrapping up if you
For
want.
sure.
We should let her
'Cause
make
we
her
have
point.
probably- Oh no, for sure. We're not just gonna close out while she's AFK and then or getting her shit fixed and then she comes back in like no one's there.
All right, which is the good one? There we go.
Hi. Did that work?
That did. That's a lot better.
Did I come back in time to say bye?
You did.
No, make
You
your
did.
point. Make your point.
Yeah, make what point you were making.
Oh, just that both Biden and Trump, I mean, the two presidential, like major party presidential candidates are completely fine with the American people losing their right to a free press. And that just can't be stressed enough. People have to, I just can't believe that that's where we are. And that people are okay with kind of like ignoring that. I mean, it's insane to me.
It's a source of infinite frustration for me.
Yeah. Yeah. But I really love you guys and everybody. Good group. We got a good group.
Well, I would like to thank everybody for joining us. My name is Andrew Smith. You can find us on Twitter at action_4 Assange. All of our call to actions we have out right now are in the link below or in the description down below. You can also find them at action4 Assange.com. This coming week, we are going to be putting out a call to action to do Freedom of Information Act requests. There is a website that our wonderful friend Nikki showed us that you could do a just free Information Act request, and they help you out with all the stuff on the back end. So I'm really excited for that. It's gonna be a lot of fun getting the community together to do that one. But you can follow us. No, I already said that. Your turn.
My turn. Okay. Hey, everybody. So sorry for jumping in late, but my name is Kendra Christian, and you can follow me on Twitter at edebs13, and you can follow Denver Free Assange at DNV Free JA. And nice to be here with you guys this morning. Thanks.
My name's Steve Poikinen. I host a show called Slow News Day. If you're looking for it on YouTube, you type in Slow News Day Podcast into your search bar. I'm also on Rockfin and DLive. I recommend that you start checking out the show on alternative platforms. I'm very, very pleased that tomorrow I will be joined by my new co-host, Miss Glory Jones, as we welcome back to the program Reverend Annie Chambers and Ian Schlackman.
I'm so excited.
Goddamn Christmas without like the guilt and shit.
I need some church with Reverend Annie, man.
Hell yeah, dude. Who doesn't? So that's gonna happen at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. Please make sure that you're there for that. Yeah, I fucking love you guys. Thank you to everyone who tuned in today. Thanks to Rob Juno and to John Coyne for the super chats. The last one that just came in, dude. Okay, so John says I started at TYT, now I'm here with this show and Jimmy Dore and Medhurst and the Combo Couch, and that's like proof of concept for me. The reason that I started Slow News Day to begin with is because I do believe that everybody is on a path and that nobody is at the same point on that path, and that if you are in any way, shape, or form intellectually curious, you'll walk the fuck away from a show like TYT.
I did.
And you'll start looking for, a little bit more real, I guess. And so that was always my hope with the show. So cheers, man. Thank you. You like, did my cold dead heart a solid on that one. And I hope to see everybody tomorrow. If not, we will be back as Action for Assange on Tuesday. The venerable Ray McGovern will be joining us, so please be there for that. We are also going to be focusing on the witness statement of Khalid al-Masri. Incredibly powerful stuff in there, and we look forward to having you join us. So till next time, y'all, good luck to us all.